Bob, go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready
All
for
right,
me?
Bob.
AI companion, that
Once
uses a
again,
lot of
I
water.
thank everyone for tuning in and coming in. As I said, we're going to have probably 4 or 5 more people. We may end up with 20. You never know about this, but we ought to have a really good program tonight. I'm glad to see uh, our speaker and Stacy and Linda tune in, and hopefully this won't be the last time that you will tune into one of our videos or our Zooms. So thank you ever so much for coming. And our I guess our treasurer is in Brazil, so he'll probably give us a report from Brazil saying this is how I used your money. But no, he's another one that comes home late. So all right,
Yeah,
take it
he's
away, Mohammed.
all right. Okay, thank you, Bob, and thank you all for joining us. And our we have a wonderful speaker today. Shannon Flores joined the Offshore Wind Energy team as the Texas Outreach Coordinator in 2026. Before turning to advocacy, she was a high school teacher teaching aquatic science and biology for 14 years. After leaving the classroom in 2018, Shannon helped manage local initiatives, including coordinating community outreach efforts and strategic partnership for the Harris County Flood Control District and the City of Houston. She was canvassing programs that aided homeowners recovering from Hurricane Harvey. She has witnessed firsthand the devastation brought on communities impacted by our climate crisis and plagued by historical inequity and neglect. For the last 5.5 years, Shannon served as the lead coalition manager at Giffords, a national gun violence prevention nonprofit, and managed the National Gun Owners for Safety Coalition. She mobilized grassroots volunteers to take action on gun safety legislation and advocate for public health response to gun violence. She's built relationship across the political spectrum to push for progress and is excited to bring her organizing experience to support renewable solutions for healthier communities along the Texas coast. She has a bachelor's in history from Texas Women's University and a master's in science curriculum and instruction from the University of Houston downtown. Shannon is a ninth generation Texan who grew up hunting and fishing on her family's old dairy farm, but as an army brat has traveled around the world. She loves cheering her 3 kids at their numerous sporting events. She enjoys drinking coffee, reading, hiking, and training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow.
So please join me in welcoming Shannon to our monthly meeting. Go ahead, Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I didn't realize you were going to read the whole thing. I would have sent you a shorter bio. I appreciate the time. So, as Mohammed said, I'm with the National Wildlife Federation, and we have an offshore wind energy program. We actually have a presentation to kind of give an overview about offshore wind and its potential here in the Gulf. But I asked Ruth to set up a quick poll to just give me some insights on your background information. So, bear with me. We're gonna do a Zoom poll. You may have done lots of these during the pandemic. I know I was doing a lot of Zooms during the pandemic and played with Zoom polls. So let's bring one back and see if we can get some insights. There are 4 quick questions, and then we're going to begin with today's presentation.
Okay, so we're going to start with the one on climate change. Hopefully everyone sees it and is able to use it.
I see it on my end, yes. It may be hard for folks on mobile devices.
Okay, that's good to know. So if you're on a phone, you may or may not. It looks like 7, 8 people have answered.
Oh, that's pretty good math. As a teacher, I'd like that percentage, right? 8 out of 13, that's not bad math right there.
All right.
So do we just stay here or do we click on the end poll button?
No, I think I click on the end poll button when it's done.
Oh,
So we
okay.
have, yes, 8 out of 11 people have responded. So go to the next one.
Sure, that's fine. I defer to you, Ruth, on what you think best.
Okay, I set them up separately, so I assume I need to close one and go to the next in order to save the result.
I would say yes, but it's been a while since I was on the user end of things, so sorry.
Okay.
Can everybody see the poll?
Yeah.
Okay, now this one is
Yes.
on wind energy. Okay, we have 8 results again. We may have 2 people on phone, so I'll go to the next if that's okay.
Sounds good.
And the next one is on renewable energy. And this time we got
I
9.
I
Okay.
hate to ask this, but could you do the first 2 again?
No, I don't think I can go back to them. You're on a phone, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. I'm
so it
sorry.
might be difficult for you to complete it. But
Okay.
so we got 9 out of 11 people on this one, so. All right. And I think,
Yeah, on the cell phone, it's probably difficult to see.
yeah. Did we have 3 or 4? I only have 3 here. Oh no.
It's okay. There was a fourth one, and that's fine. So maybe what we'll
Okay.
do is can you display the answers to the first 3, Ruth, so that all of our attendees can see? And then
Yes.
we can utilize the chat for the fourth question for me to get some insight on y'all's thoughts, if that works.
Yes, if I can figure out how to show, oh, here, view results. It would be the button that
You're-
says view results. I
Hey, you're
mean,
doing
how
great.
easy is that?
You are
Thank you.
doing great. Thank you so much, Ruth.
So, can you see the results? Can
I
you
can't
see
see
it
the
or
results on my end. Anybody else?
I can't.
you
I
can't?
cannot.
Wait, hold on.
No, it
There's
did
also a
not
button that
change
says share
other
Well, there we
results.
go.
There we
There you
go.
go.
It's just plain English.
That's okay. Oh, that's great. So it looks like most of y'all are familiar or very familiar. So a overwhelming majority of y'all are familiar with climate change. So that's great. Can we see the
Okay.
next one?
Yes. Okay. Hold on. Where? Now I just have to find the button again that says shows us the results. Wind energy. Okay. Hold on. You can't see it, can you? Or you can.
No, not question 2.
No,
I've still
not
seen
yet.
question 1. Yeah.
Okay, that's odd because it says, oh, maybe I have to stop sharing and then share the next one, share results.
Great. Oh, good. And y'all are also well informed about wind energy. That's wonderful.
And the last one, view results, share results. I'm a pro at this now.
Yes, y'all are wonderful. Okay, and again, good portion of y'all are familiar with renewable energy, so that's wonderful. The last question, if you could just utilize the chat, and we'll monitor. The question was, Ruth, you have those in front of you by chance? There
Yes, I
were,
do. Hang on one second. I don't know what happened to the last one, so I do apologize. What is your top environmental concern right now for Texas?
and
That's
I
the,
know that there's a lot happening, and we talked about data centers, and I hear your concerns, but I whittled it down to 4 things to kind of
yes,
just help me figure out what works best for y'all. So, Ruth, could you give those 4 options for me,
yes.
please, ma'am?
Right. So again, the question is, what is your top environmental concern right now for Texas? And the options are air pollution, extreme weather and natural disasters like heat, drought, flooding, threats to wildlife and wild spaces, and attacks on renewable energy. And I can actually copy and paste the question and those answers into the chat if that's what you're going to be using for people to
That's
post
perfect.
answers. So
Yes.
let's do that. So
Thank you so much, Ruth. And if you could, and if it's easy for you, especially for those of you on mobile devices, if you could just respond 1, 2, 3, or 4, what's your biggest concern? 1 would be air pollution, just like Ruth put it in the chat. 2 is extreme weather, natural disasters, including heat, drought, flooding. 3, threats to wildlife and wild spaces, or 4, attacks on renewable energy. So we got a vote for 2 from Linda, extreme weather. Another 2 on extreme weather and disasters, 2. 2. Since most of us are in Houston Metro, oh, there we go. Mohammed has 1. I assumed we'd have more for air pollution. Again, no judgment here. It's just for me, the teacher brain in me trying to figure out what your worries are. So I'm going to go ahead. Thank you so much for your help there, Ruth. Round of applause for everybody for Ruth helping with that. I asked her to do that, and I appreciate you as the Zoom master. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to share with you our view of responsible offshore wind energy at NWF. My colleague Stacy Ortega is in the Zoom room with me. She's the manager of the Gulf, the broader Gulf, and is a native Louisianan. And so thank you so much. If you would please give me a minute, I have sent a share request in.
you should be
and
good.
Thank you. I'm gonna share number 2. Great. And it is really hard for me to see the chat when I'm giving and sharing my screen. So Stacy, if you would just, if something's immediate and we need to answer that question, just hop off mute and let me know, please. I really appreciate y'all's insight, and I'm glad to see that y'all are such a well-versed on this topic. So again, my name is Shannon. I'm with the National Wildlife Federation's Offshore Wind Energy program, and we're going to talk about offshore wind in Texas. So here's our quick agenda. The National Wildlife Federation's been around since 1936, and we're going to break up today's discussion into kind of 4 specific sections before we have a take action page. So we're going to start today with some background on the need for offshore wind in the U.S. and NWF's focus. Then we're going to share some key stats and some numbers of offshore wind. And then we'll give some background information on how offshore wind works today. And although there are no current projects here in the Gulf or near Texas, we will share details on the current projects and those that are under construction. And then we're going to talk specifically about Texas, state specifics. And then we will have time for questions. Finally, there is a take action page with some resources and a call to action and actually an event coming up next week. I promise that this is a lot of scientific information and some numbers, but I won't be talking the whole time. And Stacy, my fellow expert here, will help in the chat if there's anything pressing. Please use that chat for questions. We do also have a short film that is going to break up today's presentation. So let's go for the need. So why offshore wind? So let's talk about it. Climate change is the single biggest threat to wildlife, wild spaces, and communities. Y'all are well aware about that. So I'm going to actually just move forward and go about the reasons that we at NWF are worried about the climate crisis. So there are lots of impacts for wildlife because of climate change. And I was excited to see that Amnesty International, the US chapter, has climate justice and climate change as an issue that you focus on. And so we're going to go through left to right on this slide about the impacts to wildlife and humans because of climate change. So we have more unnatural disasters and extreme weather, and lots of you put that in your poll about what you're worried. Last summer, the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in just 45 minutes, and that water swept through central Texas, and that's this photo of the aftermath of that flooding in central Texas. The Gulf has warmed approximately 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970, and that warmth provides additional energy for powerful storms, capable of producing rain and sudden flash flooding even far inland. And I saw somebody in the chat talk about El Nino. We are in an El Nino, another warming period. So we're just kind of adding on layers of problems that we're seeing. Number two, as a wildlife organization, the extinction of species is top of mind. And our iconic monarch butterfly is just one example of many species that are endangered because of climate change. Extreme heat, more intense wildfires. Heat is the leading cause of weather-related deaths in the United States. And with that comes health risks in addition, I skipped one, I'm sorry. Middle of the slide, changing agricultural yields that result in food shortages. Then we go to extreme heat and wildfires. And then now on the far right, health risks from pollution. So we are in obviously an oil and gas rich state, and we are in a petrochemical area. Refineries worsen asthma and other respiratory illnesses. They contribute the chemicals contribute to cardiovascular disease, and residents who live nearby these areas of industry have exposure to chemicals that are known to cause cancer. So all of these are the reasons that NWF focuses on climate change, and our team specifically is focusing on offshore wind. So we're going to talk about offshore wind and why we are supporting this transition. Offshore wind reduces the dependence on fossil fuels. And so it makes our energy grid more reliable because it's a reliable energy source. And this is a key opportunity to work against climate change. 80% of the US population lives around crowded coasts. Obviously, Houston is one of those areas, right? And so if we build offshore wind, we can provide power to meet the greatest demand with the largest population. One offshore wind turbine produces as much power as 3 land-based turbines. So if you think that a majority of America lives along the coasts, if we develop power off those coasts, we can supply energy to a majority of the population. And estimates that say that if fully developed, offshore wind energy could generate 3 times the US current energy demand. So now I'm going to stop talking and we're going to start. I'm going to share this short film, and there's a button that I think I needed to. I'm going to stop sharing real quick because there's a button I have to put when I share audio, and I forgot to do that. You think I would have done that after 6 years of Zooming? You think we would figure it out, but apparently not. So now I'm going to share, and we should be good to go. Are y'all still seeing those slides?
No.
Okay, stop sharing.
Well, it did flash for a minute with a windmill picture.
Okay. So can you see the slides now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have a short film. It's called Coast to Coast, and this will kind of give you an overview of NWF and our focus on the environment and offshore wind.
I like being a part of that conversation about how we can enhance the environment and not just take from it.
I've been very lucky to live in a lot of different coastal environments, and all of them have their sources of joy.
I have mixed feelings about what the future is looking like right now. I think it would look better with offshore wind in the picture.
Offshore wind, it's opportunity.
Sorry, y'all. Notice that the connection is unstable.
Maybe if we all turn off our video, that will help. But it looks frozen to me, actually. And now it's moving a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Let me just go ahead and do that. Sorry about that, y'all. And yes, Janet, the Trump administration is actively opposing offshore wind projects. So we are in a conundrum. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing again. I apologize again for the tech. Do y'all have audio back from me? Is that fine, or am I still buffering?
Nope, you're good.
You're fine.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that. I appreciate your patience. And it's really good. It shows all three coasts. Galveston Island is featured with our partners at Audubon, Texas. It's a really great short film. So I apologize we couldn't include it here. Okay. So what is responsible offshore wind at NWF and how does that work? And so we at NWF have been working on offshore wind for about 10 years. It started regionally as a project because offshore wind began in the Northeast and it's expanded to all three coasts. So we have staffers on all three coasts working on offshore wind. And we have these 6 guiding principles that kind of outline our work on why we support offshore wind, why we support responsible offshore wind. And it's centered around doing the least harm to wildlife. And so number 1, projects that are deemed responsible avoid, minimize, they mitigate and monitor for adverse impacts on wildlife and habitats. Number 2, they avoid and minimize negative impacts on other ocean uses. So that could be recreational fishing. It could be commercial fishing. In our case, it would be shipping because we have multiple large ports here in the state of Texas. 3, it includes robust consultation with Native American tribes and local communities. 4, it meaningfully engages with state and local governments and other interested and affected parties from the very beginning. It works, number 5, to avoid negative impacts to underserved communities. And 6, it uses the most recent available scientific data so that we can have informed decision making. Right. So this is our mitigation hierarchy, which at NWF we use to kind of monitor what projects are considered responsible, and it guides our work. We're going to begin at the very bottom, and again, it's to avoid those negative impacts whenever possible. So we want to exclude areas that are critical for species or habitats before anything gets built. Next, we want to minimize, so during the design and construction plan around the needs of species that are present in the Gulf. We'll talk about a couple of those species on the next slides. Then we want to offset in the green section. So if there are negative impacts that cannot be avoided, we want to implement positive conservation measures. And then finally, at the very top, we want to monitor. So from the initial site consideration throughout the lifespan of an offshore wind farm, which is about 30 years, there needs to be planned studying of habitat and wildlife patterns. You want to scientifically quantify the environmental impacts, and we want to measure effectiveness of mitigation strategies. So specific to the Gulf, there are lots of species that we would monitor, but I'm going to just share 2 because of time. So this is Rice's whale. Rice's whale is one of the rarest and most endangered whales on Earth. They live year-round in the Gulf. This infographic is actually from NOAA, and it talks about their threats. So it's estimated that fewer than 100 individuals are in the wild, and some recent estimates suggest that there may be as few as 50. And so Rice's whale population is really vulnerable, and scientists estimate that 1 death from human impact can only occur every 15 years if the population is to recover. So unfortunately, this March, you may have heard the term God Squad. The Endangered Species Act has an extinction committee, and so they met for the first time in over 30 years. And they chose to exempt Gulf oil and gas activities from the endangered species protections. And so that impacts the critically endangered species, including Rice's whale. And so the idea that we want to exempt oil and gas activities is a threat to wildlife. It will increase ship traffic. It will increase noise pollution. There's an increased risk of oil spills, and NWF is closely tracking this development, and some of our partners have actually joined a lawsuit against this decision. we'll talk about it a little bit later, but offshore wind activity that was planned during the Biden administration in Texas was deliberately planned outside of Rice's whales habitat. And that was because NWF and our partners ensure that as part of the development process. Another species we would monitor would be the endangered Kemp's Ridley turtle. Sea turtle populations, because of climate change, temperature changes, pollution, are a threat across the world. But Kemp's Ridley's is one that's here in the Gulf. It's been designated as an endangered species since 1970. The majority of Kemp's Ridley's nesting occurs on the Western Gulf. That includes Texas, Louisiana, and parts of Mexico. And some of you who have been in the Gulf for a while will remember the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill. More than 300 oiled turtles were rescued offshore, and they were brought in to be rehabilitated, cleaned, and released. That's the picture on the right. In addition, eggs from 275 sea turtle nests were collected from beaches that were under threat from oil. And scientists estimate that 167,000 sea turtles of all ages were killed during that disaster. So we have seen, obviously, firsthand the dangers of oil and gas exploration in the Gulf. And both Rice's whale and Kemp's Ridley were just a few examples of the species we would monitor here for responsible offshore wind if it was developed in the Gulf. At the beginning, when we talked about NWF, we talked about mitigation strategies. So these are strategies that are meant to reduce and do as little harm as possible. So there are lots of technical details in reference to offshore wind development. But the good thing is that offshore wind development has been pretty active in Europe and other parts of the world for a long time, and there's lessons to be learned there. And so these are just a few examples of the strategies that can be implemented to reduce harm to wildlife. So we're going to start on the left-hand side. Bubble curtains are a noise abatement technology. So it reduces the amount of noise during pile driving, and excessive noise is really harmful to marine mammals. And so when the foundation for the turbine is set up, we drill into the seabed floor, much like traditional oil and gas. So we found that these bubble curtains help reduce that danger to marine life. Another example in the upper right is increasing visibility for blades. So that could be installing flashing lights or painting the blades on a turbine, one of the blades black. It helps reduce the attractiveness to birds, and it helps with visibility. And another in the bottom right could be requiring specifically trained protected species observers to be on the lookout. And so if construction is happening or a migration is happening, then construction can be stopped if those species are spotted. Again, these are just a couple of examples that we work with developers to ensure that we do as little harm as possible to wildlife and habitats. So next is going to be some numbers, and we're going to talk about the data on offshore wind and why it's beneficial to consumers and the planet. So little scientific review here, bear with me. So we're going to talk about watts. My screen seems to be frozen. I'm sorry. There we go. So watts are the image, imagine that little bitty light bulb in your house. So we're going to review these electrical terms for just a bit. So a watt is an energy unit of power for electrical appliances. And so a kilowatt, kW on the screen, is equal to 1,000 watts. A megawatt, or NW, is equal to 1 million watts. And a gigawatt, GW, is a whole lot of energy, and that's 1 billion watts, or 1,000 megawatts. And so for context, NRG, according to NRG, in Texas, the average household uses approximately 45 kilowatts of power per day. And so that's 0.045 megawatts. Okay. 3,000 megawatts is approximately the power output of 5 coal power plants. We do have good news globally. Offshore wind capacity grew by 9 gigawatts in 2025. That's up 16% from 2024. And the total offshore wind capacity globally is approximately 92 gigawatts. So that's a whole lot of power and electricity. And finally, it would take around 10,520 megawatts of offshore wind energy to power New York City for 1 year. So a couple more figures that we're going to talk about, and we're going to go left to right here. Oh, there we go. So on number one on the screen, there are over 12,000 offshore wind turbines operating globally, and we have about 80 here in the US. They're all along the East Coast. Nationally, we have the potential to develop over 3,600 gigawatts of offshore wind power. And so, for context, in 2023, the total US electricity generation was just over 1,100 gigawatts. So, that's a potential generation 3 times the current demand. And number three, there are four completed projects in the US, bear with me, that are generating a combined 970 plus megawatts of offshore wind power. And there's currently another 5,000 megawatts that are under construction. Really love this stat at number four. A single 15 megawatt offshore wind turbine can avoid as much as 13,400 metric tons of CO2 emissions. That's the equivalent of removing 24,000 cars from the road. And finally, the stat at the bottom, one single spin of an offshore wind turbine can power the average US home for 2 days. So offshore wind turbines, remember, are more efficient than land-based turbines just because they are much, much larger. So we're going to go numbers again. Bear with me while it loads. Offshore wind turbines are about 3 times the size of the Statue of Liberty. Why my screen is kind of all wonky. I apologize. On the left-hand side of the screen, you should see the Lady Liberty stacked up back to back. So they're huge. And because they're so huge, they can generate more power. So number two at the very top, a single blade of an offshore wind turbine is about the size of a football field. So that's about 350 feet. And number three at the nacelle, which is at the center of where the blades meet, that's where the generator is. It's about the size of a school bus. So if you could just imagine how big these structures are. And number four shows the turbines spaced apart, and that's a little bit bigger than a nautical mile, which is slightly larger than a normal mile. And that's because it allows for traffic to travel in and out of the turbines. That could be commercial traffic, recreational, fishing. Again, the average lifespan of a wind farm, we talked about this earlier, is about 25 to 30 years. It can be recommissioned, which means we update technology. We talk about ways to enhance the energy production. And right now, about 90% of a turbine can be recycled. So that's really good news for being able to utilize this material in a different way. And now we're going to take a look, number six, what happens underneath the turbine. And with hope, my slideshow will go back to normal. So if you've been in the Gulf long, we have obviously lots of oil and gas infrastructure. These underwater foundations for fixed turbines create artificial reefs. So this is familiar for those of us that have heard about shipwrecks or seen oil and gas infrastructure. And so it creates new habitat where there wasn't any before. And so that's positive for us. So now we're going to talk about offshore wind today and talk about the projects that are generating power along the East Coast. So this is a pretty simplified graphic about how offshore wind energy works. So we're going to begin the kinetic energy of the wind moves the blades and generates electricity in the nacelle. Again, where we're converting that kinetic energy into electrical energy. And so then that energy travels down through undersea cables, shown at number 2 in the graphic, sometimes to an offshore substation, which is shown at number 3. And then it continues to transmit that energy through buried cables, again, 4 and 5, until it enters the grid onshore by consumers at number 6. And please note that offshore wind energy takes a long time to develop. It's a process that generally takes between 10 and 15 years. And NWF works with developers and both the federal and state government to implement that mitigation hierarchy to protect wildlife at every stage. And so this graphic shows that there has to be coordination between both state and local government. So for Texas, we would be in the light green on the left, and then the federal government in the darker green on the right. And so offshore wind projects are typically built in federal waters. And for Texas, that's 9 nautical miles off our coast. And they're managed by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM. But they have to coordinate with the state because the power cables must travel into state waters and then enter the grid on land. And so there has to be coordination. And so during this time frame, there are multiple opportunities for public comment. Our colleague, Julia, is working on the West Coast in Oregon, and they're in the public comment period right now for their offshore wind project that they're developing off the Oregon coast. And there's opportunity to require developers to abide by specific environmental stipulations, or they could provide specific community benefit agreements to support the local community and provide opportunity and benefits. So we talked about it earlier. There are 4 active wind projects generating power, and they're all in the Northeast. So Block Island Wind Farm was built in 2016 under the Biden administration, and it generates power off the coast of Rhode Island. CVOW, oh my goodness, I'm having a lot of tech issues. Really sorry, guys. I apologize.
Oh, almost.
Sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. It looks like your connection is maybe a little unstable.
Yes. My kids are all at home for the summer, and I find that my internet is definitely much less stable.
Imagine
that. Seriously, I'm like,
well, next time they have to give this presentation then.
Yes.
Instead of playing video games or whatever they're doing.
Exactly.
Can I ask you a question while you're getting your slideshow back, or will it break your concentration? The slide that you had with the new organisms, where exactly have they congregated or nested or?
So if you imagine we see the turbines that's above the surface of the water,
Right.
Those are in the structures that are underneath the water. So there's a large pillar. Stacey, what term would that be? But it travels all the way down to the seabed. And so they attach, barnacles attached to the side of the side of the hull, they are, and then we have coral that develop, and you could probably see sea stars in that image. All of that becomes part of the kind of new reef habitat that is developing.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really very cool. Stacey, by chance, I don't know. I don't think Stacey's internet is not much better than mine.
I mean, you can try sending it to me, but I don't know how good mine's going to be, but we can try it if you want to.
Do you have this downloaded, or is this straight from Canva?
No, this is a PowerPoint.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, file. Let me, or it's a Google slide. Let me Slack it to you and see if that works. I mean, I'm not going to Slack it to you. I apologize. I'll chat it to you. I'm so sorry, y'all. I really apologize about the tech. Tech happens all the time, right?
Indeed. And who would have thought we'd still be on Zoom all these years later?
I know. Oh my goodness. Seriously. Okay. Let me see, Stacey, if that opens up for you. So anyway, while we try, is there anybody else? That was a lot of talking, and it wasn't broken up by the video. Is there anybody have questions before you go back into the active projects that are happening on the East Coast?
I have more questions. Oh, but Bob raised his hand. No, Bob raised his hand politely.
Oh, look at you,
Well,
Bob.
Let's call him Bob.
I've got a comment and a question. So when I used to go deep sea fishing on the party boats, if we didn't catch anything, we would go out to the oil rigs, and man, the fish were there. It was incredible.
Yep.
So my question is, and I hope people won't throw things at me, but are oil companies now more responsible for the environment since they're going to be in the Gulf than they were years ago when we had that big blowout?
No, unfortunately, they're not. And this is a little bit out of my realm of expertise, so Stacy can correct me. But this new God Squad decision that just happened, right? The Trump administration's God Squad ruled that oil and gas companies in the Gulf of Mexico no longer have to follow the endangered species protections. So and if you've lived in Greater Houston for a long time, you likely already know that refineries are often not meeting their emissions requirements anyway, and so now offshore, unfortunately their actions are kind of the guardrails that were in place to protect endangered species have been removed. But to your point about fishing, Bob, that happens on the East Coast all the time. And in fact, our colleagues are coordinating. There's a fishing tournament that's happening around one of the offshore wind farms, and that's been happening for years because fishermen, and in the film, he was also interviewed as one of the recreational fishermen that's in support of offshore wind development, is featured in the film. And he talks about why he supports offshore wind as a fisherman because it provides opportunities for him to enjoy his hobby. Is it going to work, Stacy?
Let me try.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, I've been having some internet issues today as well, unfortunately, but we're gonna try this out. Okay.
I'm going to take the spotlight off you. Oh, there we go. It worked.
And I did just download it too, so if we're having internet issues,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
It's probably better downloading it, but we can try.
That's actually a
Okay.
good flag.
Slideshow.
Perfect.
I may have to forward.
You
Bear with
rock,
me
Stacey.
for
Thank you
a
so much.
minute.
Ruth, did you have a question? You want to ask that real quick while we get to the right slide?
Oh, it occurred to me the construction and installation of those wind turbines, like how does that have any, any fallout from that mitigate the good that it does?
So there's a figure, one of our colleagues is a marine biologist, and she collected this data. I got a similar question when we were in Corpus Christi earlier this year for April for Earth Day. There's a significant reduction in emissions. Obviously, any development can have impacts, but there's a significant reduction in emissions from offshore wind compared to oil, natural gas power generation or coal power generation. And so yes, there is obviously any development has problems, but what NWF and our partners that work in offshore wind, we work with the developers to set up policies and procedures to do as little harm as possible. Does that help explain that? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Give me just a second.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions?
This is Kathy Boyd. I have a off-the-wall question.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, you said there's like 12,000 turbines globally.
Yes, that's correct.
And I was investigating a company called Ørsted, Orsted, off of Denmark.
Yeah.
And do y'all monitor their mitigation or all their work, or is there a higher international group that follows them to make sure they're doing things properly?
So we do work with Ørsted actually, and they are working on building some of the turbine installations on the East Coast. Stacy will be able to explain better, but part of NWF's process is that developers who do offshore wind work, they set out a plan, and there's this coordination. So yes, we've worked with Ørsted, and they don't have the lease in the Gulf now. That's a different energy developer, offshore wind energy developer, but they do have um, leases on both the east and west coasts, I believe. Is that right, Stacy?
I'm sorry, I'm distracted.
That's okay. No worries.
What's the question?
The question is if we've worked with Ørsted and we have monitored their mitigation strategies. I'm guessing from your question is that whatever you read was that they're doing bad things. Is that right? Is my gut right there?
No, I don't know anything about
Okay.
them all, except I was wanting to invest in them for Denmark work
Oh,
because
yes.
I was trying to put my money into some good
That's good.
things, a company here, and I turned out the company I've been investing in, they put the majority stuff into Microsoft and Amazon. I said, okay, wait a minute,
Okay.
let's go back to something
Yes.
that's more beneficial to the world.
Yes.
And I saw I could invest in them overseas. I thought, well, I thought, well, why not? So I thought,
Yes.
this is good to know that
Yes. No. Fun fact, Ørsted actually owns the ship. So the first offshore wind service vessel, so it's a ship that transmits the turbines from the port out to the area and for the build is owned by Ørsted, and it was built in Brownsville, Texas. Is that right? Is that no? There, I'm conflating the two. But Ørsted is a developer we work with. Well, they're servicing projects on the East Coast that are generating power for thousands and thousands of homeowners.
thank you.
Yeah. And I had a really great visual in the slideshow that you likely won't get to see because of time. Stacy, do you want to?
Shannon, do you want to try to see if you can share it again? Well, and as I'm
yes.
saying that, this might come up. Sorry, guys, I need a new laptop, and I closed out of everything so that I wouldn't have an issue on this call.
No problem. It's okay.
Okay,
I'm so very sorry.
Let me see if I can share a PDF. What are the odds?
We'll try it one more time, and if
tech
not,
issues.
I'll try on my end. Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can get this PDF.
Oh, that's a good idea. PDF.
Can you see the PDF?
As basic a technology as we can get.
Can you see the PDF?
I'm so sorry, y'all. No, ma'am.
While I'm doing all this, Shannon, can you see if you're able to reshare, just so I'm not holding everybody up?
Yes.
If you're able to pull it up again.
Yes.
I think Sayed has his hand up.
Yeah, there's another question.
Oh, yes. Samsung, I'm sorry, I'm calling you Samsung because I can't remember what your name was at the top of the call. Mohammed's friend.
That's okay. My name is Sayed. I'm a Master's of Science in Renewable Energy. So I just wanted to ask, as NFW shortlisted or found areas, urban corridors in the Gulf of Mexico, near Texas, where offshore wind farms can be placed, and if so, I mean, has there been a cost analysis done for how much it's going to cost us for the consumers to have this energy?
That's actually two questions. I'm going to answer your first one first.
Yeah.
The BOEM did the initial valuations in 2016 at the end of the Obama administration, and we're going to talk about that here in the section when we talk about Texas. But the costs are initially borne by the developers. So the comment earlier in the chat, I want to say it was Janet, don't quote me on that, mentioned about the Trump administration's buyback. So they created that agreement with Total, which was a French energy company. Your screen, Stacy, is frozen. I just see number 3. I can see the PDF, but I can only see number 3. Sorry, back to the question. That buyback was a return of the investment that the developer put on the area off the coast of the East Coast. For consumers, offshore wind is cheaper than other energy sources. And that's because during the negotiation, there is typically an agreement between the developer and the state. And so they agree to a standard energy price. And so it is based on the numbers we're getting from our colleagues that work on the Northeast, it is cheaper for consumers in the long run. Um, Unfortunately, in the Gulf, we have a unique situation where you have a lot of industry. And so industry will also be getting that power. And if you go on ERCOT, you can see that industry is using power too, not just general consumers. But by and large, offshore wind is cheaper for consumers and it's more reliable. And that's going to be one of the ending points that we make on why we should move this direction in Texas.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
My question was with regards to if whether, because these are going to be big energy
Yes.
plants.
Yes.
And does the Gulf, does Texas has the grid capability to have that power input at long distances?
Not now, no. Not
Yeah.
now, no. Sorry to interrupt. I'm worried about time, but not now, no.
Yeah.
But because the projects are 10 and 15 years out,
Yeah.
the state needs to coordinate because there needs to be transmission capability. There needs to be negotiation between the federal and the state government. And unfortunately, right now, our state government is not supportive of
Yeah.
offshore wind. But I'll get to that in a minute. So on the screen, guys, real quick, is our details about current projects that are under construction. There are 4 projects that are actively generating power on the East Coast, and there are 4 that are currently under construction. And they are generating, 2 of them are already generating power. So if you wanted to go down a nerd rabbit hole, you can use that QR code at the very bottom and see all of the active projects that are happening all across the country. And Empire Wind is in New York. It's going to be built later this year. It's projected to generate 816 megawatts of electricity, which is the equivalent of powering 500,000 homes. Seaval Commercial is in Virginia, off Virginia Beach. It will have 176 turbines when it's finished, generating 200 megawatts of power. Sunrise Wind Energy is set to be completed in 2027 in New York, and that will generate 900 plus megawatts of electricity. That's the equivalent of powering 600,000 homes. And finally, Revolution Wind will be off the coast of Rhode Island and Connecticut, and it's already sending energy to the grid. Next slide, please, Stacy. One more, please. Okay, now I just see states. There we go. Perfect. So lots of y'all already know about renewable energy in Texas. This is a live snip just today for real time. 29% of our electricity was generated by solar and 14% by wind. And this fluctuates regularly. You can go on at ERCOT.com all the time. We lead the nation in renewable energy. We are number 1 in wind power generation. We are number 1 in solar capacity, and we are number 2 in battery storage. And so we're an energy leader in the renewable sector. And so that's why it's really unfortunate for me as a science geek and as a native Texan to have our state leadership be so uninterested in exploring this as a resource. Next slide for me, please, Stacy. So this is a snapshot of the lease options under BOEM. That's the Bureau of Energy Management. Texas is one of the only states that does not have an offshore wind energy goal. There's currently 1 Gulf lease area, which is off the coast of Louisiana, kind of right at the Texas-Louisiana border. And unfortunately, in the last years of the Biden administration, there were no bids on the lease sales that were off the coast of Galveston Island. And unfortunately, another ding is that in 2024, the Texas General Land Office under Commissioner Dawn Buckingham, she actually sent 2 letters in opposition to the Gulf offshore wind lease sales. She cited hurricanes and she cited the endangered Rice's whale as the reason. And so as a result, Texas sites did not get any bids because if a company sees that the state leadership is not interested, I seriously doubt they're going to want to put in this very expensive investment when state leadership isn't interested. Next slide for me, please, Stacy. So this is actually the map of the wind potential. And so the areas that are going to generate more power in the Gulf under the estimates from BOEM is off of the Texas coast and the Louisiana coast. And the Gulf estimated generation is 500 gigawatts, 500 plus gigawatts of power. And right now, ERCOT is estimating that the load forecast in 2030, so here in 4 years, is 138 gigawatts. So 500 gigawatts versus 138 gigawatts. There's a whole lot of power potential here in Texas. But right now, unfortunately, our leadership at both the federal and the state governments are not in support of this opportunity. One more slide and then we'll have questions. I really appreciate y'all's patience. I'm so sorry. So this is a snip from our partners at Oceantic. You can go to oceantic.org at the bottom to learn more. There are lots of connections here to the state of Texas already. So each of these little dots is a bid, an offshore wind bid to a project somewhere across the country. So we have engineering bids, we have manufacturing, steel, shipyards, and more. The first U.S.-built offshore wind ship or vessel was built in Brownsville, Texas. The first U.S.-built owned and operated substation was built in Ingleside, that's just north of Corpus. The Charybdis is the first vessel that was built. It's the vessel that was built in Brownsville. It was designed by an oil and gas engineering firm in Houston. There are all kinds of connections all across the state. Unfortunately, all of that stuff and all of those benefits are going to other parts of the country because we don't have any active action happening for offshore energy here in the Gulf. So in closing, one more for me, please, Stacy. There are quite a few reasons why we feel and I feel that Texas should explore this energy source. It's going to reduce pollution, and that will reduce health concerns and reduce the emissions, which are creating stronger, more deadly storms and natural disasters. It's going to be reliable. So the East Coast experienced a really freak blizzard this spring, and the data from Offshore Wind Energy, which was powering the Northeast, showed that the grid and the production of energy from offshore wind was stable. Okay. It's affordable, right? States, again, we talked about this a little bit with your question, Ahmed. States buy offshore wind power in a long-term contract. We're talking 20 years. And so it provides stability in contrast to fossil fuel markets, which fluctuate. It's high-quality jobs, right? There are already wind turbine technical training programs here in Texas. There's one at UHD, University of Houston downtown. There are other, obviously, connections. We've got somebody who's studying renewable energy, right? Engineering, construction, and more. And then finally, for us at NWF, it helps protect wildlife, right? This transition will slow the impacts of climate change, and it can reduce harm when possible. So I have one final slide that talks about, we're going to skip those slides, Stacy, but I'm going to have Mohammed send that in an email afterwards because of time. So I apologize. We ran really long, so I don't know if there are any additional questions before we close it out. Bob?
Bob, do you still have your hand up?
Yes. I have one last question. You talked about, you touched on it. So how safe are these windmills in these offshore waters whenever we have hurricanes? What's the, yeah.
That's a great question. So the again, let's imagine this is a long-term process, right? So the bid opens from BOEM, and a company puts a hold on that area. And so then there's a period of time where they do studies and research and R&D to figure out what's the structure they're going to implement. And part of our work during the Biden administration, Stacey will likely be able to answer this better and can add details, is that obviously in the Gulf we have hurricanes, but they also have hurricanes in the Northeast. And they also have offshore wind turbines that have been generating power since 2016. So just like during a hurricane in the Gulf now, oil and gas industry typically pauses activity during the hurricane, and those structures withstand the hurricane. part of the development of this resource for our neck of the woods would be to make sure that the structures can withstand. And that's again in the research phase that they will develop when they start that process at the beginning of that 1 year, between the 1 and 15 years it's generating power. Does that help, Bob?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, essentially right now there needs to be technology there's technology that can handle the seabed conditions. There's technology that can handle storms, but they exist separately in the infrastructure at the moment. So because the Gulf is kind of generally lower speeds compared to other areas of the country, and because we have stronger, we can have high winds at peak times during hurricanes, then we need a turbine that can kind of run the gamut, right, of those generally lower and those extreme highs. So each end of that spectrum, that technology exists, but there was a company called Gulf Wind Technology in Louisiana that was actively working on trying to develop turbines that could go in the Gulf. That way they could hopefully manufacture turbines for future projects in the Gulf. So they got to a point where they were ready to do a pilot test of the technology. However, because of the current situation, that pilot project isn't going to move forward right now. So they do have technology up to a point that they're ready to test it. But because of the conditions, they're kind of focusing more on the land-based wind now, because they were going to need approvals to install this pilot project. I think it was going to be at Port Fourchon, Louisiana. So there is technology that they think they are getting pretty close to a turbine that is able to go in the Gulf. We're just going to have to wait on that to be able to move forward to testing.
I think Julie has her hand up.
Yes, I was wondering if there was any actions that we can take. Excuse me, that we can take, contacting our representatives, lobbying, anything like that. Do you have any suggestions as what we can do as individuals to help?
That's a great question, Julie. I actually sent that to Mohammed, so he'll send it in an email after the fact. It was my final slide. But our partners at Environment Texas have developed an action alert where you can message Don Buckingham, that's the General Land Commissioner or the General Land Office, because state leadership needs to start the coordination and say, we're interested in offshore wind, and then that kind of triggers the federal government to begin coordination. Don Buckingham's got a lot of power right now because the offshore wind cables would be generated in federal waters and they have to go through state waters and off the coast or on the coast in order to enter the grid. And that's GLO land or GLO territory. So there's a message that you can send as a Texan, as a voter, to the commissioner to show your support of offshore wind. It's a clickable, so it takes just a minute. You put in your address and then it shows that Texans are in support of this renewable option. Great question.
Would it help to also call his office?
You could most definitely. I find that I've worked in advocacy for a long time, and I always feel that real conversations are better. And so if you want to do that, feel free to do that. That's a great idea.
Well, yeah, I just have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about it. I mean, if we proceed with these offshore farms in the next 15, 20 years, 15 years, these structures are going to make a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot of vibration. Has the NWF done any studies to see how it's going to affect the sea life and the ecosystem because of that?
Yes. Yeah, that research hasn't been done by NWF, but we use that research to guide our insights. So if you go at the top of the call, I put it in the chat, but I'll add it to the chat now. If you go to our website, is offshorewind.nwf.org.
Okay.
We have a resources tab, and part of that includes a huge amount of resources from our partners working both here in the United States and globally about why, as a National Wildlife Federation, we support this technology. They're also really far off the coast. Because I rushed, we didn't talk about it, but the projects under the Biden administration were going to be 20 miles off the coast. So if I sit in Galveston, I see ship channel ships waiting. I see cruise ships for waiting. But if there were an offshore wind farm on the coast of Galveston, I'm not going to see that turbine. It is so far out. I'm going to see oil and gas infrastructure. I am going to see other ship and port infrastructure. I'm not going to see an offshore wind farm.
Yeah. So my question was more regarding the sea life, the aquatic
Yes.
life, because these vibrations are going to travel down into the seabed.
Yes.
And so I was just, yeah.
If you go to that research, there's a couple of fact sheets that we've developed. It talks about all of the
Okay.
scientific data and why we support this source.
Okay.
And feel free to, I'll put my email in the chat. I have additional access to research. So if there's a specific question you're looking for, I'll talk to my science colleague and see if I can find it for you. Flores, there's 2 S's, because my first name is Shannon, at nwf.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, I think there's no more questions. We will. This is the end of the presentation. Hey, Shannon, thank you so much, and Stacy, thank you so much. This was really very, very informative. And yeah, with Amnesty International, our number one issue right now is environmental justice. And this kind of falls into that area, and it does make a lot of sense to listen to experts like you to educate our community. And then Julie brought up the action part. Hopefully, the midterm elections will elect a good leader
Yes.
in this area who at the state level who manages this area, that will make a difference.
Yes. And because of
Yeah.
there were technical difficulties, it's okay. I'm going to share the presentation with you, Mohammed, in a PDF form so that you can email it to people, because there was a lot of information there and we had to rush. So I don't know if that's typical, but I'm happy to share it with you so that you can have that as an option.
I copied and pasted the Google Drive that has the presentation. I'm gonna try to see if I have access.
Yeah, please don't share that, because I don't want anything to be edited. So I'll download it in a PDF.
Oh,
And if
okay,
people
okay,
don't
okay.
have a
All right,
Google
okay.
account and they don't want to like give their data to big tech,
All
I
right,
can put it
okay.
in a PDF and that'll be easier for
Okay.
folks.
All right. Okay. Yeah, send it to me as a PDF, so that way it takes less storage.
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
appreciate you. And I'm so sorry, y'all, that we had technical difficulties.
No, it was
No,
really
that's all right.
informative.
That's okay.
I learned a lot.
Technology is not our friend.
Oh my goodness, seriously.
And I really enjoyed the survey.
Oh, thank you. And it's so good to know. And I ask a plug, I have a survey that on how the presentation, and so it's 5 questions, and I'll ask Mohammed to send that to you for the attendees to kind of just give us an idea of if it's too much information, if it's too much science, or if it's just about right. So please be honest. It's anonymous, so you can give us constructive feedback. It's welcome. I see Bob smiling, right? I see you there.
Okay. All right. All right, guys. So our next meeting, first Monday of the month, it's July 6th, same time, same place. And we guarantee that we will have another outstanding speaker on a very relevant topic that you all love. So put it on your calendar, save the date. And Shannon and Stacy, if you all want to come back and just listen to our next speaker, just let us know.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a blessed
Bye,
one.
y'all.
Care.